Hi all. We're just going to talk a little bit about Visual Studio in case you're new to it. Here, I'll go back to that web page where we downloaded it. They cover some pretty advanced topics here. It's just showing some of the more advanced features of what you can do with it. There's these tabs here along the top. Bring you to other areas. Don't try to absorb all this stuff quickly, you know. It may take quite a while before you really grasp what all this stuff is. Sometimes never. You may be involved in some certain area where you just don't need this other stuff, whatever it is. You know, just like if you were going to walk into a hardware store, you don't need to know what every tool in that hardware store is for. You know, just the type of thing that you do, that you work on. Those are the tools that you need to know about. So it's the same thing with Visual Studio. There may be parts of the application that you never use. You know, there may be parts of the application that you only need once in your lifetime. But because of that, you know, Microsoft has to put that feature in there. So that's why it may seem a little overwhelming, because everything under the sun is in there. So here, just to go over some of this stuff to let you know what I'm looking at here. This is the main part. It's free. You know, when I first got into Visual Studio, it was about 1995, 1996. You know, I had to pay for it, and it was hundreds of dollars for a small version, just a standard version. And every year or two they wanted more money, a couple $100 or more, and that got very hard to keep up with. So it's nice that they have free versions now. Just to give you a little history, from what I can remember, it used to be standard version, professional version, and enterprise version. I forget the exact names. But then later on, somewhere around 2000 or so, they came out with the Express versions, and it was Visual Studio Express, and they were basically just slimmed down versions of the professional version, and there was some things you just couldn't do with it, like mainly from what I remember, you couldn't connect to a database with it. So that's what they're saying here, fully featured. You know, you have access to all the features. It's you can expand on it. There's things that you can add to it. It's an IDE. That's the integrated development environment. You know, it's the program that you pop open and you've got this whole GUI that you can use to build an application. And it used to be that you only used it to create applications for Microsoft Windows. Yeah. But now you can use it to build apps for your phones. You know, Android phones, which would mainly be like a Linux phone. iOS phones, that's Mac, right? So, you know, it used to be just the Windows platform. Platform is the fancy word for it. You know, what platform are you on? Are you on Windows or are you on Mac? That's the platform. So Windows platform, Android platform, iOS platform. So it's cross-platform. That in case you happen to bump into that phrase as you're reading through things, that's what that would mean, is cross-platform. That's pretty common now. You know, it didn't used to be. You know, you could go out and get a specific application just to write Android applications, or you can get a specific application just to write applications for the iPhones and tablets, you know, Mac stuff, Apple stuff. Or you can use Visual Studio to do all three. You know, there's no right or wrong, you know, however you prefer to do it, you know. It's kind of nice having it all under Visual Studio. You don't have to learn 3 separate systems, you know. My best advice to you is to specialize too, you know. Don't try to learn everything, you know. Pick one area and specialize it. Get real good in that one area. So, well, that's what they say right here. Everything you need all in one place. Build apps for any platform. You know, that's what we just got done talking about here. What platform? There's all types of tools. There's the design tool. That's where we dropped and dragged the buttons. The editors. That's where we went in and typed in the code. The debuggers. It helps you find errors in your code. There's all types of ways that you could add to the application. And there's many different languages, you know. When you get into computer programming, you'll find there's many different languages. Everybody and their brother is creating a new language these days. There's a few that have been around a long time, like almost forever. And there's a few new ones that have been around 10, 20 years. And there's some very new ones just came out recently. You know. It's hard to just pick one. Lots of times there's some overlap, you know. It's kind of hard just to pick one because you may need a few just to create a simple application these days. So, but don't try to learn them all at once, you know. Like just work on Visual Basic for now. Then when you get pretty good with that, you might want to move over to C# or C++, you know. HTML in general is pretty easy. You know, most people can learn that pretty quickly, like a week or two, or even less. You know, just the basics. But the advanced stuff can get hard, especially when you start combining HTML and JavaScript. So, Python, PHP. ASP, those are things more based toward the web. You know, Perl. You know, those are more of a Unix-based thing. Python, PHP, and Perl are more of a Linux or Unix type thing used on the web, where ASP would be Visual Basic on the web. So that's a big just a big general way of saying that type of thing. So I'm just throwing those terms out there to get you used to hearing the terms, because I figure you might be flipping through web pages or magazines and you're seeing all these different names, you know. So later on I'll show you a few examples of these things, you know. Once you learn one language, it's real easy to learn another one. It's all kind of the same stuff, you know. Once you learn Visual Basic, you could probably learn C# in maybe a couple months or so, depending on how much time. Not the advanced stuff, but enough to where you could be pretty good with it, you know. C++, that's another story. That's a pretty tough one. So I plan on doing separate videos on C++. So powerful coding tools, you know, that's where you type in your code. Lots of it's cut and paste now. You see they show you all these colors. You know, it makes it easier to find errors and things like that, you know. Debugging is a skill on its own, you know. There's basic debugging and more advanced things. So you can build apps. The main thing now would be to create a Windows app, upload it to the Windows Store, sell it for $1 and hope 1 million people buy it, you know. That's like the goal of a lot of people these days, you know. Even if 50,000 people buy it, you know, you're set. You know, if you could get 50,000 people a year to buy it, you're doing pretty good. So apps on a device, a device being a phone or a tablet, you know. Your web tools, you can upload your application right to the web, right from Visual Studio, if that's the type of application that you build. Some are desktop apps. They run right on your desktop. Some are web apps. They run out on the web. See, there's many different languages inside Visual Studio. C Sharp, Visual Basic, C++, F Sharp is a fairly new one. PowerShell is a fairly new one. JavaScript, Python, and so on. If you're going to be a Windows administrator, you should learn PowerShell, and I plan on doing some PowerShell videos too. And starting with Visual Basic would be a great place for you to start. No matter what language you learn, Visual Basic is the place to start. Of course, you can just start with C Sharp if you want to learn C Sharp. There's no problem with that. If you want to just learn C++, there's no problem just starting with C++. There's no problem with that. That's a personal preference. Every person you talk to is going to tell you something different. Now that I'm a little older and I've been doing this for a while, I think Visual Basic is probably the best place to start. I've been teaching programming since probably '98. I've been training people ever since I can remember. As soon as I was like halfway through college, 1979. Every place I worked, as soon as they found out I had some college, I was the person to train the new people. So I've been training people for as long as I can remember. I was probably 19, 20 years old. I started training people, and it's just one of them things that it kind of became my shtick. I do stutter, but it's kind of like one of God's weird twists, being a teacher but stutter. I've tried to get out of it a few times and I keep falling back into it. So you see an ad on the web, send in a resume and you get the teaching job. So just to explain why I'm doing this, these days with all the school shootings and all the weird diseases floating around, I just thought I'd get away from the school settings and just see if I can get something going here on YouTube. So that's why I'm here now. So, and I think this is the place to be. Working through the web, especially for Google, with Google, or however you want to phrase it. I think that's the place to be now. Lots of companies are struggling. I've seen a lot of big companies come and go, especially in the computer business. So okay, this Git, that's kind of like it's a website where you can upload your code and others can see it and others can use it. If you're searching for a job, you can send the HR, the human resources people, to see your code at GitHub. Here is somewhat of a license thing. For individuals, any individual developer can use Visual Studio Community to create their own free or paid apps. So you can actually use it to make money. That's nice. That they offer it like that. And if you want to see more of the license terms, you can go here. And the whole license is laid out here. Okay, so there's the first page. Features. You can see there's lots of stuff to talk about here. This isn't the type of thing that you can skim through in 15 minutes. But, here, this is what you might be interested in. You can use it to create mobile apps for the phones. That's what's popular now. So create mobile apps for iPhone, Android phones, Windows phones with Visual Studio. Use your preferred coding language. So you could use Visual Basic, or I suppose they aren't really specifying here, but I suppose you could use C# or any of them. Cross-platform tools. That's basically the same stuff we talked about earlier. Hybrid apps with JavaScript. Lots of the Windows 8 apps were just HTML. It was like an advanced form of HTML. At least the GUI end. There's more stuff going on behind it, but so it's HTML with JavaScript. This native, what that word means is, you're on Visual Studio, you're on a Microsoft application, you're writing an application for Microsoft Windows. It's native. Your app is native to Windows. So you can actually write a Windows application with C#. This API stuff, that's like free code built into the system. That's these things here that you can use in your code. It's pages and pages and thousands of lines of code that you can freely use inside your code, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So with 100% of the native APIs exposed, that's all of the Microsoft Windows APIs exposed, you have full access to everything. Now, just learning to use an API though can be tough too, because you can't just willy-nilly do it. You know, there's certain ways that you have to use it. So, but it does make it a lot easier. You don't have to start from scratch and do everything from scratch. You know, just like if you were going to use a hammer, you don't have to go out and melt down your steel and mold a hammer and get a piece of wood and shave down a handle. There's a tool that you can use. Same thing with the APIs. There's built-in code that you can use in your apps. You can do the same thing with C++. C++ is really where it's at. I had a teacher that always said C is king. Just to show you what I'm see, you'll see this written a lot. C++. This is actually two separate languages. C or C++. Here they're just saying C++. In the old days it was just C. C pretty much still runs the world. Old C code that's been around forever. New and improved C is called C++. Now you can have C++ code that has C in it. You can kind of mesh the two together. So, but you'll see books and it'll be written like that. C++. They're real similar. They're almost the same, kinda. So you'll see it written like that, but really it's two separate things. C is one language. C++ is a different language. New and improved C. And I plan on doing some videos on that too. I actually thought about starting with C videos, but I went ahead and started with the Visual Studio videos. So that's what they're saying here. You can write Windows apps, native apps. Native means native to Microsoft Windows with C++. Right, you can write game apps. There's a built-in emulator for Android, which means you could use Visual Studio to write the code and then test the code right on your desktop. You got this small picture of a phone that pops up. You can run your code. When the small picture of the phone pops up where you run your code, that's called the emulator. Asier is something fairly new. It's probably been around 5 years or more. It's just running your apps up on the web. There's a lot more that you can do with it. So that seems to be where it's at these days. Okay, here's you can it looks like you can download code here. Here's the extensions. You can add things on to Visual Studio, like some people might know them as plugins or add-ins. I know Python is used a lot these days for the big data stuff. So that might be why they're doing that. Let's see here. So, like Python or R programming, just the letter R. That's what they use for big data now, and the DNA type stuff, bioinformatics. So that might be why they added this. They have an extension to Visual Studio where you can use it to do Python from Visual Studio. So that's pretty cool. News web page to keep up with the new stuff, and it's nice they have it dated. See, here's the updates. It was just released today. I don't know. It doesn't say if that would be for the community edition. It just says Visual Studio 2015 Update 1 Release Candidate. So let's see what this is here. Here's a known issue, the Visual Studio emulator for Android. So there's always updates for this stuff too. And like I said earlier, don't get caught up in every little detail with this stuff. We're mainly just going after the code. I don't want to overwhelm you now. I just wanted to run through some of the basic stuff here. Question and answer page. This looks like something new. Visual Studio Online is up and running. Okay, here's online help. Documentation is like books online. So let's see what they got here. Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to skim through some of that stuff to give you an overview of the web page.